We're expecting this audio expert and engineer by trade, Ivan Lynn, to undergo what we expect to be very extreme cross-examination by the state prosecutor, Gerrie Nel. Certainly very intense cross-examination if the previous witnesses are anything to go by. It's so important to remember why we have Ivan Lynn taking the stand at the moment. It all comes down to the beginning of this trial. If I can take you back to what one of the ear witnesses, you remember the name Michelle Berger, what she had to say. This is a neighbor who lived 177 meters away from the residence of Oscar Pistorius. Remember as well, she described hearing blood-curdling screams, and in her testimony she says it was a woman that she heard screaming in the early hours of February 14th. Now this has become very important, as you know, Joanne, in this trial because there are claims that when Oscar Pistorius, this is the words of his own attorney, when Oscar Pistorius is under stress and under duress, he screams to a pitch that sounds like a woman. So of course that's become very, very important now. And as far as this particular witness is concerned, they are making sure that every single detail of his research and the work he's done before appearing in court is presented in court. If you weren't watching yesterday, it certainly was, I think, fair to say, rather dry testimony, but certainly very, very detailed, going on to explain the decibels that can be heard over a certain distance, whether it is at night, during day, whether it's ambient noise, even at one point, Joanne, bringing out a device that captures audio and showing inside the courtroom that even as quiet as it was, there is ambient noise that can affect someone hearing a scream from 177 meters away. He then went even further to explain that a lot of it has to do with cultural factors. What is that person that's actually hearing the screaming? What's their perceptions of the situation? What is their background? And what is their history when hearing noises? Don't forget, just like how you and I might ascertain different temperatures of water, you might think water is very hot, I might think it's only mildly warm. We also hear things differently, and that is what this defense witness has been brought in to say. There was a scream, but it could very well have been Oscar Pistorius screaming like a woman.
Well, of course, earlier in the day, we also saw testimony by Gerard Edwards, who we know has treated Oscar Pistorius since he was a child, who carried out those bilateral amputations, which he had done when he was under the age of 1. Gareth, just remind us of what he had to say, and indeed the cross-examination that you described as fairly tough that he underwent from Gerrie Nel.
That's right as well, and I think it's probably one of the first times that we've seen in court, apart perhaps from Oscar Pistorius' friends, someone who knew and knows Oscar Pistorius so intimately. As you quite rightly say, this is the man that performed the actual amputations when Oscar Pistorius was still a baby, and not only performed the amputations then, he's in fact been consulting with Oscar Pistorius his entire life. Now, for those who are not following Karen Morn, our specialist reporter, do yourself a favor. If you're on Twitter, go and follow her. It's at Karen Morn. On Twitter. There's a reason I say this, Joanne. She had a wonderful way of summing it up, and I'm going to paraphrase, if you don't mind. Essentially, imagine being this doctor. He was there to amputate his legs. He saw him rise to the stardom of an Olympic star and is now testifying in his murder trial. And I think that just sums up beautifully the kind of witness that we had in Dr. Varsveld yesterday. He would go on to explain intimate details, Joanne, that I think many people weren't expecting inside a courtroom. He would go on to explain how Oscar Pistorius actually feels while walking around on his stumps. We've heard in the past the term vulnerability being used, but he actually explained the physical sensation that someone like Oscar Pistorius goes through. At one point even saying if there's the slightest crease in a carpet, if there's a stone that perhaps Oscar hasn't seen or someone in his position hasn't seen and they step on this, it is incredibly painful. I certainly think it does talk to the kind of vulnerability that Oscar Pistorius and his defense team are trying to put forward as to how he would have felt on that morning, as according to his version, he was not on his stumps when he heard this noise.
No more. eNCA.com